Some people in this world are on the front lines of the struggle between good and evil, and some, like us, bear witness. I'm Therese Apel.
And I'm Nicole Kral. You may have heard us as we worked on stories and series about law enforcement and crime. And it's safe to say we've seen some of the best and worst of human nature.
We decided there's no greater honor than bringing you the stories of the men and women who seek out the monsters, who speak for the victims, and who put the pieces together on some of the biggest Mississippi crime stories of our time. Welcome to Investigation Homicide. Hey everybody, welcome to Investigation Homicide. I'm Therese Apel. Today we're going to have a conversation about what is going on with crime in small towns, because one thing that we know for sure and that I've been studying since 2015 is that we do have gang crime all over the state. We've got different networks working, and just overall, crime is becoming a bigger problem, even in what we like to call sleepy little one-horse towns. So while Crystal Springs is not a sleepy little one-horse town, it might have 5 horses, right?
That's correct.
So I'm here with Nicole Kral, as usual.
Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you for joining us.
And we are here with Crystal Springs Police Chief Robert Thomas, who is also a Brigadier General.
That's correct.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, grew up in a small town in Mississippi, Lewin, Mississippi, or Bay Springs is the closest big town, which is about the size of Crystal Springs. Was drafted. My draft number was 1 in 1970, so I was drafted. Even though I was in college, they said, "No, you're not. You're going to war." Wow. So, joined the Navy. Served 4 years in the Blue Water Navy. Left the Navy in '74. My desire was to go to college, get a degree, and go back to the Navy as a commissioned officer. Well, University of Southern Mississippi did not have a naval ROTC, so I went to the Army ROTC. Was commissioned as second lieutenant in the Army in 1980. Served 38 years with the Mississippi Army National Guard, 4 years in the Navy, which is 42 total years.
Wow.
Was deployed twice. Spent 16 months in Iraq and had a awesome mission there, which we like to say we restored America's honor, because we were sent to Iraq, unbeknownst to us, to rectify the big issue at the Abu Ghraib prison, which we did. Anyway, came home in '05, finished my state service with the state of Mississippi as comptroller for Mississippi Army National Guard. I was director of finance and accounting. I retired there in 2018, came home to do things I wanted to do for a change. My wife had family land down in Liberty, Mississippi, so I started working on that farm, trying to clear the land and get ready for some goats. I want to raise some goats. So we haven't given up on that, but then all of a sudden the opportunity to serve the police department of Crystal Springs came along, and the mayor asked me to stand up to traffic division, which I did in 2022, I believe. So I worked that and headed that up for 3 years until the recent chief, Tony Hemphill, left. And then the mayor came to me and asked me to fill that position on an interim basis, which I agreed to do. And this past Monday night, I think it was, the city council saw fit to make me the permanent chief. So I'm now the chief of Crystal Springs. So we're here. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, congratulations.
So we're fighting crime and making people in Crystal Springs happy.
That's
That's
right.
quite the history.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a hint of the history.
That's just a drop in. That's just
the real history is awesome.
I would love to ask
That would
you
be
one
another
day.
podcast. That's about an hour and a half.
Think
worth.
about each. I feel like about each one of those things as well. Like you could have a whole podcast about each.
I have a presentation, a slide presentation that I do just on the Iraq tour. That's an hour and a half, and it's pretty awesome. Every time I give it, I've given it across 3 states and about 400 times, and people are jumping up on tables saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe." Gave it to the Mississippi legislature when I first came home, and the Speaker of the House came to me and said, "Look, Colonel," I was Colonel at the time, says, "we're busy. If people have to get up and leave while you're speaking, don't take offense." And I said, "I will not." So for an hour, I spoke to the House and the Senate, and I think the Senate conference room. No one left.
Wow.
So at the end of that, people were on the tables, jumping up and down, saying, "Oh my God, we need to put you on a speaking tour.
Right.
You need to write a book." And it was pretty awesome. So, and then from there, it just exploded, went everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
it's a great tour. I give all the credit to the guys who served with me, who actually made that mission successful, and we truly did some awesome things.
Well, one day we're going to have you on here to talk about Abu Ghraib as well.
We'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be glad to do that.
That's awesome. Okay, so to bring it back home, which is hard to do, like that, I can pick your brain forever.
Crystal Springs is just as important. Okay.
It is. Oh,
Yeah,
that's very sweet.
absolutely. So, okay, I know that through the years, I told you I went to high school in Copiah County,
Right.
so I'm pretty familiar with Crystal Springs. And when I was in high school, I was not a typical preacher's kid because my dad had been a prosecutor, so I knew what happened to the bad kids. So I was a good kid. And I guess I didn't see any of the bad stuff that happened. I mean, I didn't even know my friends smoked cigarettes, much less anything else.
Well, just to put you at ease, I was a preacher's kid too.
Oh, wow. What
Baptist
denomination?
preacher.
Baptist.
That's even worse.
Right. So I guess my first question for you is, now you said you've lived there since 1999.
That's correct.
Okay. So I have watched as we have gone, and there was a time that Crystal Springs, we know there are gangs all up and down 55, but also all across the state.
Right.
And several years ago, I did a show called Frontlines, and I had an episode on the gangs in Crystal Springs and how Crystal Springs and the county were kind of trying to manage
Right.
it. And then I came back a year later, and an episode we never got to air, I rode with Chief Hemphill.
That's great. I saw you that night.
Yeah, and so we were going through these neighborhoods that had been so ridden with gang crime, and they were waving and they were excited to see us and
Right.
thank you. And I mean, it sounds like I'm making this up, but there was a marked change.
It is. And
So talk about Crystal Springs and in your knowledge of it. So that's going to be the last, 26 years now. I was going to say 15 or 16 years. No.
Womp, womp, womp.
Tell me what you've seen. And I realize, part of it, your career was elsewhere also. But what have you seen as far as the evolution?
Well, I really can't speak earlier than 2021
Sure.
on that evolution because I was never there. I worked out of town every day and almost every night in my military career and my state service. But when the city of Crystal Springs asked me to come down and work the stand up the traffic division, then I began to see what was actually happening on the streets of Crystal Springs. And I was not aware of any gang activity in town. And as I moved around town doing traffic and working in certain neighborhoods, I was told by certain police officers, "Hey, be careful in this street, be careful in this community. We got this gang down here, or they're on the north side of town and on the south side of town, and they're called the Trap Babies."
Yeah.
That's what they call themselves. They were a powerful gang at the time, but under Tony Hemphill's leadership and some of the great people we've had on the police force, we have beat that gang back.
Good.
So there used to be, I would say, in the city, probably 30 members of that gang, and they would also infiltrate from the Jackson area and other surrounding areas to the city. They would bring in drugs. They were doing human trafficking. They were doing prostitution, murders. But now in Crystal Springs, that's pretty much beat to not a zero level, but we've beaten it down to the point to where we hardly see any of that activity anymore. And the way we've done that is under my tutelage, every time we run into a problem with a gang member or anyone else, I throw at them everything they've earned. Every crime that they committed, I don't turn my head. If it's 3 charges, they get 3 charges. If it's a major crime, they get the major crime and everything related to it. And that way, when the prosecutors get it and the judge sees it, it's not just one charge. It's everything we see. And so the Trap Baby gangs will begin to realize, whoa, well, we need to cool our jets because this guy ain't fooling around. And I'm not. Now, and on top of that, we've recruited and hired some really good police officers in Crystal Springs, some young guys and some other people who had left the police force in Crystal Springs that I've encouraged to come back, and they're serving again. People with knowledge of the streets, people with knowledge of people. I now have 4 sergeants on duty, 1 every shift, and 4 patrol officers, 1 every shift. So we have on every shift 2 or 3 police officers at all times.
Sure.
Wow.
So anytime anything happens in the city, we can respond within 3 minutes anywhere in the city. And we don't just send 1 person. We send everybody that's in uniform and in a car.
Now, how many people are there in Crystal Springs at this point?
Just over 5,000. It varies between 5,020, 5,030 to 5,000. But I think the last time I looked, it was about 5,100.
Wow.
And I have to fill a grant out every year that requires me to give the numbers, so that's why I know. And I'd say there's 5,099 good people in Crystal Springs. Okay? And it has no relation to race, sex, religion, or whatever. Good people, okay?
Yeah.
My goal is to bring that community together, regardless of your race or your religion or your sex or your whatever. Everyone who lives in Crystal Springs deserves our attention. And I give everyone there the attention they need. If you call us, and my motto is, if you call us, we're coming. Okay?
Aw.
Everybody on duty is coming, I can tell you. So there's never been a call to the police department that we didn't respond with at least 2 people. Sure. And that makes the community comfortable. So one of the other things we've done in town now, since I've taken over, is we have 6 new cars, new vehicles. Each one of those cars have cruise lights, what we call cruise lights. You turn in as a solid blue light and it stays on. It doesn't blink or flash or any of that. And so we drive through all the communities and down streets, especially at dark, with cruise lights on every vehicle. And all the people in the community see that, and they say, oh, man, police are here. I ain't worried. I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
And plus, it keeps the bad guys' heads down. They see us coming. They ducking down saying, oh, there's Popo.
Yeah.
So we're having good effect on the community. People are out walking their dogs, or out, man and his wife are out walking the streets. People are running. Kids are riding their bicycles, and all the communities, not just the prominent communities. I'm talking about all the communities.
Yeah.
And people are beginning to relax about crime.
Sure.
So we're making a difference. Now, crime, yeah, we have it, a lot of it. I say a lot of
That's
it.
going to be
A
everywhere.
lot of different crimes.
Yeah.
But it's not to the point where it's overwhelming. It's not. It's underwhelming because we keep it beat back. And I don't turn my head. I mean, if it's crime, we give it the attention it needs.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like it's like a symbiotic relationship where when the community feels safe with you, then you feel connected to the community. So then they're more likely to come to you if there's an emergency. And then you just have this great outlook on it, which you don't really see in a lot of small towns in Mississippi. And
Right.
for somebody to say that is almost a bold move, to say everybody's welcome. You're welcome here. We want you to be here. And here we are with open arms, and you're safe here.
That's
And
right.
I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you're safe.
And
I got like you get the goosebumps because
Yeah.
you just imagine the lifetime
like a big family.
small town and
Right.
everybody gets along and you just wave. And
It's like the Mayberry you
Yeah.
always see.
Mm-hmm.
We're not Mayberry, but we're not Jackson.
so I imagine when the gang activity was happening, was the energy a little bit different in that small town?
Yeah, say that again.
Was the energy a little bit different when that gang activity was
Oh,
prominent?
yeah. Yes. Everyone was on edge. People were nervous. They didn't go out as much at night or often on the streets. And now that we've identified the gang members, we go after them. We don't wait.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you some of the stuff we've done in the last 2 weeks. It's pretty awesome. I've arrested a 13-year-old last week for armed robbery. And before he left the booking room, he and his mother both were in huge tears. Because I've told him, I said, son, just because you're 13 doesn't mean you're getting away. You're looking at 30 years. And man, that tore his world apart because he came in all cocked. I'm 13, you can't do nothing to me. But when he left, he realized, oh, yeah, that man means business. And I do. That's what I'm saying. I'm throwing it at them as hard as I can. You must get their attention. That's the way we deal with it.
Well, and the thing is too, even if the court doesn't hit him that hard because he's 13, he understands what kind of business you mean at this point.
Well, it wasn't just one charge, though.
Yeah.
They're going to hit him. Yeah. He may not get all that I suspect he should get, but we'll get his attention.
Sure.
He may not do that again.
Well, so talk about also, you being, I can't say there are a lot of towns of 5,000 in the state that have a brigadier general as their police chief. How do you, and if I'm a gang member, I'm moving at that point.
It's just, it is actually like kind of crazy.
Yeah,
You know
this
that,
guy
right?
messed things up
Well,
in
everyone,
Iraq. But
everyone in town calls me general.
yeah,
Very few of them refer to me as chief. And I prefer that because it has a little panache,
It's different. It's
they're
cute.
saying, should I call you general or chief? I said, I prefer general, but you can call me whatever you want, It doesn't change the fact that if you step out of line, we're going to be talking.
well, all I can think is seriously, if I'm a bad actor, and somebody tells me that he's been messing stuff up in Iraq, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go
Yeah.
bother somebody else.
Yeah, it has a certain flair to it that causes the bad actress to take pause and say, like you said, I'm not sure. Matter of fact, we have heard in some of the communities around us, we've overheard some conversations, not me, but other people, and have brought it to me that they've heard some gang members in Byram area talking at a restaurant, and they were talking about what to do, and one of them says, man, whatever you do, stay out of Crystal Springs. That guy down there is not fooling.
Mm-hmm.
So that is having an effect.
Well, and that's what I
my
hear
intent.
too. Yeah. And the thing is, of course, sitting where I sit, I hear from a lot of law enforcement.
Right.
And that's what I hear too is, and it started with Tony, and you were like the perfect person to follow him up.
Right,
He's,
right.
Nicole, he's working interdiction now.
He is.
So he was an interdiction officer and went
fun.
back to it. We had a show for a while on interdiction in Rankin County.
Right,
so,
right.
So
Nice.
now, how does your military career translate? Like how every day, I'm sure you're using stuff that came from that.
I've thought often about that. In the military, our goal is to defend America and to put it bluntly, is kill the enemy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we do. So in the police world, our goal is not to kill anyone, but it's to keep in check the people who want to do things we don't want them to do. So it all boils down to leadership and how you lead the troops, how you guide the troops, and where you are in that process. And if you ask anyone in town, generally the people in town, or the police officers, where is the general when you're all out on mission? He's out front. He's out there. If we get a call, you're generally going to see me there.
Sure.
Okay? Especially a big call, like a serious crime. I will be there. I don't care what time it is. When I first took over, we had 3 or 4 or 5 police officers leave because for some reason they didn't want to serve under me.
Sure.
I don't understand that, but anyway, they
I
did.
think that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was left with 2 police officers and me. And so I was working 2 and 3 shifts a day myself to keep, I could not let the city burn down around me. That was, my goal was to protect the city, and I did it. So I would go 36 hours at the time with no sleep. But then you get to the point where you cannot continue doing that because you're in your mind's in a lull state. You're tired. You may do something you wish you hadn't have done, or you may not be able to do something you wish you could have done. So I would be on a shift, say at 2 in the morning. I would go home, lay on the bed, get a nap. Dispatch would call me if something happened. And that's the way we got through it. So now I've pretty much filled the ranks again. I'm two police officers short, but I have 8 full-time slots available. 2 are unfilled, but I have 12 part-timers on the books.
Good.
Willing to come fill the ranks with me. So I have plenty of people to call from. If I need one of the part-timers to fill in a slot, we do that. But I think I'm veering from the question now. What did you ask?
I asked how you're, and I was interested though. I asked how how your duties
Oh,
in the military translate. Yeah.
Well, it goes hand in glove. What I've learned in the military through my 42 years there transitions over to the police world, kind of with tactics and techniques and procedures.
Sure.
Every time you go out or plan a mission in the military, you should do the same thing in the police world. You don't just, like for instance, if we need to make an arrest and we know it's a bad actor and he's probably has guns, you don't just go barreling in there and beat on the door. You have a plan. We're going to have some people go left, some people go right, some in the rear, some up front. We're going to hide. We're going to walk in. We're going to go flying in with cars, whatever. You must have a plan. That's the military background that you plan for success. Without a plan, you're going to lose. You will be defeated because you don't know what that guy's going to do. First of all, you do your intel work. Where is this perp at? What does he have? What is he being convicted of in the past? What will he likely do if we show up at his residence? How many people do we have available to make this apprehension? Just plan it. Plan it for safety first. We don't plan to shoot anyone. We don't plan to kill anyone. We plan to make an arrest without any kinetic activity whatsoever, as peaceful as we can. But if they push back, we're ready.
Sure.
If they push us, we will fight. Okay, but we don't want to.
Well, and a big part of your job as a general and as a police chief is to keep your guys safe to get them home.
I want them to come home.
How does that part correlate?
100%. In the military, we go to a fight knowing we may lose some, but we make that plan first. You have that plan in place, and everyone, even down to the lowest level, must know the plan. You can't have a plan at the senior level without telling the guys at the junior level. Otherwise, someone's going to die. A lot of people are going to die. Same way in the police world. If I have a plan with the investigators and my troops on the ground don't know it, it's of no value whatsoever, because that plan will fall apart the first bullet fired. No one will know what to do. And when you get to a location to make an arrest or whatever you're going to do, if the troops on the ground don't know what the plan is, you may have somebody go into McDonald's and get a burger, not knowing that they shouldn't be doing that. You must have a plan. It correlates 100%. Same thing in the military world, same thing in the police world. You must plan it. You must have leadership.
Well, and I think a lot of times the line of duty deaths that we see are situations either that aren't planned for or that it's hard that you don't see coming.
That's correct.
So
that's why I always in my life, and I try to tell my wife this, I always expect the unexpected. Be aware of everything around you. If you walk out this door at night, go into your car, when you walk out that door, you should look briefly in that parking lot, see what's out there. And I'll tell you this. I mean it. My wife comes out of a store, I tell her to look out in the parking lot, see what's out there. People hide. They're walking around. They're trying to look innocent, but they're not, because some of them are bad, bad people. And I even do it myself because I could be targeted. I'm not worried about it. They can target. I'd rather they target me than someone else because I'm prepared for it.
Sure.
Because I will react quickly.
Well, and you just had a couple of weeks ago, you just had an officer that was attacked and beaten with a brick in his face. Did he know that was coming? I mean, that's one of those things that just amazed me.
No, that's right. He didn't know that was coming. You never know what a person will do when you put them in a position of an arrest. Some people they do not want to be arrested, okay, and I understand that. But when you tell that person they're under arrest and you pull those handcuffs out, that's when they react immediately. So be prepared. You must have a plan on what to do when that person reacts. You must have a plan. That plan may be short, it may be concise, but it must be definitive. You must know what to do. And we teach that. We teach our policemen how to react to that. That's why we go to the gun range. That's why we teach survival tactics, life-saving tactics, hand-to-hand combat, how to take a person down if they get aggressive, when to back off, and let the person be who he is until backup arrives. Don't always just barge into a situation by yourself. You may not be successful doing that. So we don't have a lot of that in Crystal Springs. we do have some assault on police officers, but it's either a person who is on drugs or drunk. And when they're in that state of mind, they don't fight very well.
Mm-hmm.
They're easy to take down, but still, I don't want my officers duking it out with someone by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Back up back away until backup arrives, and then go from there. But secret is be prepared.
Yeah. Well, and Nicole, when we were working together, you saw a lot of the small towns that we went to and that kind of thing. Does it feel like he's more organized than some of the places we worked with?
No. When you talk, I wish this for everybody. I wish we could clone you and just put you in the office of every town in Mississippi, because I feel like that's what it's just, you want to do it together. You want to make it work. You want to make sure that everybody's prepared and everybody's knows what to do. And I feel like here in specific areas of central Mississippi, it feels like nobody knows what to do. And everybody's just kind of running around, and there is literally no plan, because there is no plan, and there's also 10,000 different plans with 10,000 different people. So, what would you say to those kinds of towns? What kind of advice would you give them?
Hire a Brigadier General.
I don't think there's a lot of those available out there.
There are venues to build that team properly. The chiefs have to know. They need to know what effect their leadership has on their officers. If you're not willing to be out front and carry the plan for those officers, then you really shouldn't be the chief. If you have officers who are not willing to follow the plan, they don't really need to be officers. So it's a two-way street. The chief leads and the officers follow. Okay, the chief doesn't follow the officers. That's what I see in some places happening. The chief has to be the leader, period. And if he's not willing to go out in the field with his troops and get the job done, then the mission may not be successful. But in larger departments than mine, you have good senior leadership who can do that without the chief being present. But in my world, I'm going to be there. I don't care if I have 3,000 officers. I don't let them do it without me. That's the way I was in the military. When I was in Abu Ghraib, I had 4,500 soldiers. Anytime we did anything, I was there. And the Marines, if you ask any of those Marines that work for me there, they'll say, I've never seen anybody like this. I've never seen an 06 stand in the tower and fight. And that's leadership. That's what we do. Back in World War II, every general, every colonel, every light colonel, every captain fought. They were on the front line. General Patton was out front every time. I should have been in that era because that's me. That's what I do. I go out front.
So what happened between then and now?
Politics, I guess.
Just
politics, because you're getting away from the basic tenets of leadership. True leaders don't sit behind a desk. True leaders lace their boots up and get out in the field with their men. If that's where you should want to be. That's where I want to be. I mean, if we have something serious going on in Crystal Springs, I'm generally the first one there. And then everybody comes pouring in behind me. I'll give you, for instance, we were doing some traffic work about 2 weeks ago, had a safety check set up. We're checking everybody on the roads. And a couple of roads back from where the checkpoint was, there were some cut-throughs, and I was in a chase car because they didn't want me to stand out and check licenses and all that stuff, which I did anyway. But we had a car bypass the checkpoint and took off, and I got in behind him, pulled him over, and as soon as I stepped out of the car, he took off. Well, I chased him all out in the county for 8 miles at over 100 miles an hour. Finally got him stopped, and then I could hear the sirens in the background coming to me because I was leading the pack, and they're saying, oh, my God, where's the chief? Where is he? And they were on the radio screaming, where are you, chief? And I didn't know where I was in the county because I'm not that familiar with county roads in Copiah County. So I had 5 or 6 police officers coming to me and 5 or 6 deputies. And then when they all showed up, everybody in the county was going, oh, my God, what'd this guy do?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is you must lead. That's what leadership is. I didn't wait for someone else to chase this guy. I was in the chase car. It was my job. And I didn't want anyone to chase him. Y'all follow me until we get this guy stopped. And that's what they did. Sure. Now, they're all about that. I have some good officers. I have some really good officers. And they're all about taking care of business, too. And they kind of get irritated with me at times because I'm out front and they're not. I'm just quicker on the draw than they are.
They got to level up. Yeah. They got to do better. They got to try harder.
Yeah. But in small town America, I would say for the other agencies out there and departments that seem to fall apart at a whim, they don't really. It takes them a while to learn on their feet. Some of those guys have military experience. They need to practice that, put it into play. Have that plan in place. Don't just go willy-nilly and go do something. You must plan it. It's called tactics, techniques, and procedures. You must lay it out, and everyone must understand it.
Sure.
That's the way we do business.
Well, and let me jump thought trains for a second. We are live right now. If you're watching on Facebook right now, you can type in the comments and you can ask questions if you have them. So feel free to do that, and we will see them on our monitors that I keep looking up at. That makes it look like I'm looking off into space. and we'll do that for you. So do that, and we will check those from time to time. But to kind of bring it back to talking about, I know that the police chiefs, you guys have several different ways to network.
Right.
What do you hear from other chiefs in small towns as far as, one trend that I see all the time in my line of work is you just don't think it's going to happen here. It's that kind of thing. And even down to last summer when we lost an officer in Summit.
Right.
Who thought Summit would have a line of duty death?
Well, I haven't had a lot of connectivity with other chiefs yet because I've been so busy trying to build my own department and straighten it out, get the leadership in place. Like I said earlier when we were talking, always expect the unexpected. No matter if you never suspect something like what happened in Summit. Matter of fact, that was, in my estimation, an officer error. You never walk up to a window and just stick your head in there. I teach my officers not to do that.
Right.
And we approach the automobiles the right way. And I'm not saying he did anything wrong, and, bless his family, but you never expect there to be that sort of bad actor in the vehicle.
Yeah, not in Summit especially.
That guy had a 40 cal Glock, and it had a what we call a switch on it. It makes it fully automatic. Mm-hmm. And one burst, and he hit that officer 14 times. Yeah. So he didn't really do anything wrong, but he didn't expect the unexpected. And to his misfortune, that's what happens. And so in Crystal Springs, we are aware. We have recovered 4 or 5 guns with switches.
Yeah.
Recently. So we know they're there.
Those have been in the news quite a bit up here as well. It's like, and I don't know if it's just that the media is just now aware of them, and so we actually talk about them a little bit more, or if they're really starting to come to the forefront on the streets as much. But that is something that we see a lot. And one of the things that I learned when I was studying gangs is that network of 55, it's like Chicago down to New Orleans, all the way down. And so all the towns along it are affected, but we are seeing this in small towns all over the country, not just the state.
And it's not just it doesn't come just from Chicago gangs. Mm-hmm. All these little gang members, and they're not old enough to be old gang members. We're talking 11, 12, 13-year-old kids up to, and the trap babies up to their 40s, but they know how to get online and find these switches. And I'm saying to the ATF, what are you guys doing? Why are you not on the internet shutting down these manufacturers that are producing these switches for these guns? They are illegal, and they carry a 30-year sentence if you're caught with one. Yeah. They're strictly forbidden by the ATF and the federal laws. You just cannot have them, but you can buy them on the internet all day long. And other gun parts that make weapons automatic. But we're aware they're out there, and we're extremely careful.
Sure.
That's why we are very cautious about our traffic officers. And if anytime an officer has a car stop, somebody else is going to show up immediately. And that's how I built the traffic division. And sometimes we have 3 or 4 officers out doing traffic. And if one guy stops, everybody goes to him. Mm-hmm. So we're having to ease off that a little bit because we're beginning to scare the community. Man, y'all got 4 or 5 cars stopping in one car. Well, yeah, we do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially if you get a person in the car who doesn't want to abide, who doesn't want to say, okay, I'll give you my license. And we have some of those from time to time, but not very often. Crystal Springs is a really nice little town. We don't have that many problems with really, really bad actors, but we do have some.
Sure. Well, and I did a story a couple of years ago. Maybe it's been like 2 years ago now, maybe 3. But anyway, a 13-year-old, maybe 13 or 14, from Crystal Springs was killed in Hazelhurst.
Yes.
And I know that I spoke with some of the people from the schools at that point, talking about this kid was gentle and kind, and I wouldn't have thought he was involved, but he was. And so one of the things that they talked about at that point is like, how do we get to where we know more about what to look for? How do I know if this kid is involved in crime or gangs, that kind of thing. So it sounds to me, and I know you've got a great mayor, it sounds to me like y'all have kind of a network in Crystal Springs it's almost like checks and balances. Like you're all aware that we don't want this. And it even to the schools and the government, it's something that's being addressed.
You never know looking at a kid if he's a gang member or not. You just don't know. Right. And these young kids, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, they're not in the game because they want to be bad. They're in the game because they're missing a father somewhere. Mm-hmm. Most of the gang members have not had a father in their life. They're looking for that father image in their life, and they're getting it from these gangs. And these older gang members are putting these kids up to doing bad stuff, like armed robbery, selling their drugs for them, or running their drugs, and whatever else the gang thinks those kids can do for them, because they know the judge and the courts probably will not prosecute those kids to the extent they would an adult. And it's true, they won't, because they get chance after chance after chance until they become habitual. Then the courts will do what needs to be done. Not all kids are bad kids. Not all kids that are in gangs are bad kids. They're there because they're hurting and they're looking for something. Right. They're not getting it at home.
Well, and so many of the arrests and so many of the gang members that are killed are just kids that got in a dumb situation. That's one thing that I learned is he might be somebody's little brother that they're saying, hey, run down to the store and get us some Cokes. And he feels so important because he's 8 and his 17-year-old brother wants him to run these errands for him. And by the end of it, he's in the life.
That's exactly right.
The thing I do want to add, too, because this is something I had to address all the time as a reporter, but we're not just talking about black gangs. This happens with white gangs. There are Hispanic gangs. It's pretty much the same across the board in a lot of these different kinds. So when we're talking about this, demographics in different cities change, but we've got all kinds of gangs in Mississippi.
Absolutely.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about, too, and Nicole, I think I told you this story, but when I was riding with Chief Hemphill that night, we had a guy in a gas station that was causing an uproar. I mean, he was trying to walk out, I think, with some beer. He got out of the cooler, and then as he's talking, he dropped it, and, So it sounded to me like when you talked about your officer that got hit with the brick, he was dealing with a drunk. And this guy that we dealt with that night,
I remember that. I was there.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So you've got the gangs, and we're talking about that, but you've also just got the guy that, if this was Mayberry, would be the dude in the drunk tank.
That's right. That's right. We do have that. We have lots of those, but we deal with them. They're manageable. They're just people who like to go drink beer, and sometimes they drink too much on top of the drugs they take. So. Yeah, you just got a nut goes in a store, thinks he can take what he wants, and tries to walk out. So
how do you kind of differentiate and make sure that somebody who is doing an illegal activity isn't necessarily tied to a gang or vice versa? Like,
how do we determine if someone's in a gang?
In a small town, sometimes people can be like, that person's in a gang, and a lot of times, they'll go investigate. So how do you differentiate that, and what kind of process do you have to make sure that
person is not a true gang member?
Right. Or isn't just being accused, or
we don't really investigate if someone tells us that kid's in a gang. What we do is keep our eye on them. Now, we won't know for sure until they commit an offense. But if someone comes to us and say, "Hey, I think my son's in a gang," there's really not much we can do about it. And if we do at the time, we can't charge them with anything because being a gang member is not an offense. If they now generally, if they are a gang member and stay in that gang long enough, we will arrest them for something they do bad. And generally, that bad is drugs, selling drugs, or using drugs, or armed robbery, or murder.
Carjacking too.
Carjacking is a big deal.
Yeah.
Or just they rob each other and call us
Yeah.
and call us to get their money back. Really, I'm serious.
Uh-huh.
They'll rob another gang member, and the other gang member will come file charges, and we'll go arrest the guy. Never get the money back because where does it go? You'll never find the money.
Right.
But that happens. Yeah, that happens a lot.
Well, and one of the things that I've learned was one of the mantras of one of my mentors in my gang studies. He always said, if you got drugs, you got gangs. If you got gangs, you got drugs.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean everybody on drugs is in a gang. It doesn't
That's
mean
right.
everybody in a gang is on drugs,
That's
but
right.
they're always connected.
That's right.
Another thing that I think is important, Nicole, to your question, is that there used to be kind of a solid way of validating gang members. And you still have like the Fusion Center and MDOC that
Yeah.
do it, but it's harder to get officers on the street to do it. And the Mississippi Association of Gang Investigators has kind of changed faces, if that makes sense. And so there used to be a process, and now that process has really just disseminated a little bit. It's kind of not as in the forefront as it has been in the past.
Well, I agree. And now the gangs in Crystal Springs don't wear gang signs anymore. They don't have their gang tats. So you don't know. That's why I say usually when a new gang member pops up and is identified, I'm surprised. I had no idea. And so that's what we're running into.
Yeah.
The straight-laced, close haircut kid walking down the street, you wouldn't think it's in a gang, but they are.
And that was one of the things that people told me when I first started doing all my research is don't worry about the gang members on the street. Worry about the gang members
That you don't know
in the
about.
offices.
That's right.
You know,
That's
like
right.
in the elected gang, they were just making the point that like,
Yeah.
you don't know.
That's right.
You know,
That's right. You just don't know. And the gang member's not our only problem. They are a problem, but in Crystal Springs, they're not our biggest problem. So
you probably got domestic violence just like everybody
a lot,
else.
Yeah. And we have a lot of statutory rapes,
Mm-hmm.
rapes with assault, incest. We have lots of, I say lots, we have some. We've had some stunning cases in the last month or so, but that I don't even like to talk about. But they're being prosecuted, and the person committing the offense has been arrested. Upstanding citizens.
I covered a story about a pastor that y'all had recently, and I just got a text message today about a youth pastor that I think was convicted today or pled guilty today or something like that from a whole different church. And of course,
Not in Crystal Springs.
I think it was in the county.
Yeah, okay.
But
Better not be Crystal Springs. I'm not aware of that one now.
The address of the church isn't a Crystal Springs address, but I
Okay.
believe that the jurisdiction
is
is
in
in the
Copac
county. Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I do not know what goes through these people's mind, and school teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen so many school teachers doing this stuff.
Right.
An offense against a child to me is a capital offense, period.
Right.
You harm a child, especially sexually, I have nothing for you anymore. Yeah. And you're not in my list of good people. So we go after that with a furor.
Now, how do you deal with it? Because the other day when we had the story about that pastor, all kinds of people came out of the woodwork to say, no, somebody framed him. No, he's a good man, da-da-da. And, of course, part of it is that when you're in a position of authority, you're always going to have the people that believe in you.
Yes.
How do you, as a chief, deal with that backlash when you have to do that?
Facts. I only deal with the facts. I have the evidence, they don't. Okay, I know what the truth is. You can say what you want. I know he's a great guy in your eyes. He's been a great pastor for the years he's been there, but I'm telling you, the facts tell the truth. So you don't have to listen to the backlash. I don't even try to discuss it with these people. There's nothing to discuss. We allay the charges, and we leave it alone. Mm-hmm. It's in the hands of the prosecuting attorneys after that. And I do not have discussions about it with anyone. not even my family.
Yeah.
I do not talk about it. And that's with any crime. There's no need. The guy's been charged, or gal, whoever it is, you're charged. It's on the books. The attorneys have it, and the courts will look at it. So there's nothing else for me to say. Okay. Now, in some cases, if a charge is erroneous, or we determine it to be erroneous, we'll delete that charge or drop it or whatever, and we will tell the public, the charge was, the guy's innocent. We know that, so we're dropping this charge. But not in this case. That guy has been properly charged, and we'll see what the courts do about it.
Sure.
So I don't have to have much discussion with the public. They know now what the truth is because they've been given the facts.
Well, one thing that I actually was having a conversation about the other day, and I think I've said this to you before, Nicole, is that it's like every time a police officer, poots, it makes the news, right?
Yeah.
Bad.
Oh, yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't step out of line.
Right. But a teacher or a pastor, you're not going to hear as much about it. And I feel like that is just as egregious.
That's right.
And so whenever we got the press release on the pastor the other day, I thought, I'm so glad that they did this. I'm so glad that we heard about this, because to me, when people want to talk about how cops are all bad guys and girls, my thing is, I was a teacher. I was a junior high teacher. In my clique of teachers, there were multiple offenses, and one guy went to prison. And I was the one that called him out. And of course, everybody was mad at me. And by the end of it, there were, I think, 3 or 6 girls, I don't remember, that came forward that he had abused. And so to me, that's a little bit of a touchy subject. So I'm grateful that that's where y'all stand on that stuff, because if you are someone who is in authority, in a position of trust, you shouldn't have that access once there's been that kind of accusation.
Well, I'll say again, if there's an offense committed, I do not turn the other way, period. I deal in facts only. Supposition, rumors, I don't act on that. People come to me with all the time. I heard so-and-so. I said, or I know for a fact that so-and-so did this. And I often say, what, you were there? And they say, well, no, but so-and-so told me. I said, okay, so-and-so told you, but that doesn't make it fact. Okay, right. I must have evidence, period. And so we try to make the proper charge the first time. And I don't charge anyone based on supposition or rumor, period. If I don't have the facts, they don't get charged. Okay? But at the same time, I'm not lenient in my charging. If you've committed it, I'm going to find every charge that you should be charged with, and that's going to be on the books, period. I come at them with a ton of bricks. That's the only way I know to keep it beat back.
Sure. Same
way I would do in the military. Some officers or soldiers step out of line, I'm hitting you with everything I can, and everyone who does it gets the same lick. Yeah. Okay? So, you're speeding down the road doing 60 and a 20. You're going to get a ticket. I'm not going to say, well, slow down a little bit. Everybody gets that charge. No one in Crystal Springs is exempt from the law. And everyone is subject to the law. I tell everybody that. Every day I make that statement. So everybody knows.
That would make a difference.
Yeah, how different is that than most small towns?
Oh, I mean, I can already think. I'm rallying up in my brain the amount of times that we've literally heard firsthand. It's like,
it
I
brings back
so
to
and so,
mind.
or I called so and so, and they got me out of this, or I told them I was going to this person's house. I get a ticket, I pay it.
Look, let me tell you, you wouldn't believe some of the things that people try on me when I was doing traffic. Well, sir, I'm about to pee on myself. I got to go.
Do you know who my daddy is?
Yeah, well, where are you going to? Well, I live right down there. I said, okay, I'll follow you down there.
Yeah.
Go in the house, and they're not in there 30 seconds, they come back. Okay? Yeah. And I'm steady writing tickets.
You're still speeding?
Yeah, and I've had them tell me before, do you know who I am? And I'll say, no, ma'am, but I really don't care who you are.
Right.
Man, you
that
talk
would change
about
a lot of things.
Doesn't it make you want to be like, you know who I am?
Oh,
a
yeah.
Brigadier General.
Yeah. I know the chief. Well, I do too. You need his number?
Yeah.
I know the mayor. I do too. Do you need her number?
Mm-hmm.
Or just silly stuff. You don't play your games with me if you want to, but
right.
I'm straight-laced, period.
Well, and at this point, there has to be a little bit of, I have had an incredible career. So if I do something and you go tell somebody and they're mad enough to take my job, I'll get another one
So,
somewhere.
I don't need this job.
Yeah.
I didn't take this job for the money. It has nothing to do with me.
Right.
I was retired and living a fun life,
Yeah.
and they needed help. Okay,
Yeah.
so I said, okay, I'll help.
You
That's
answered the
why I'm
call.
here. Has nothing to do with money or power. I have all the stars I need. I don't need anymore. Okay? So I tell people that all the time. Hey, you're not doing me any favors.
Yeah.
I don't really care. I care about Crystal Springs, and I care about people living a peaceful life.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. We can go beyond where Tony led us and go further with it.
Yeah.
And make it complete. We must complete that task. I don't leave a task incomplete. Excuse me.
And if you're listening or watching, you should know that before this, we were talking about how there's a lot of great real estate in Crystal Springs.
Yes,
And
there
so
is.
if you are as inspired as we are, then there are places for you.
Yeah.
So Nicole, parting thoughts.
I have so many thoughts and so many, like, this is just such a cool story. Your entire life is such a cool story. With having all this plan and curing the crime in Crystal Springs, do you ever feel overwhelmed?
I did the first week there
Yeah.
because I was doing the work myself. But I've come to realize being overwhelmed means there's no hope. In this case, there was hope. I knew it was coming. It was just down the road. I just had to hang on, do the job, keep the city safe, and wait for that hope to come. And it arrived. And it's been a timely arrival. We've got some prominent players in place who are really, really awesome police officers. One just graduated from the academy, a young guy. He's all about being a police officer. Man, yeah. And I had one guy that wanted to come back to us, and I let him come back. And I said, "No, look, first time you were here, you got yourself in a pickle, but I want you not to do that this time, and this is what will keep you out of trouble. When you make a stop, when you go to a call, when you're talking to people, I want you to think before you get there, what would the general do?" And he did that every time.
Oh, good.
And he's a good cop.
Good.
Yeah. So
Well, General, any thoughts? Any parting thoughts?
no, just I love Crystal Springs. I like advertising our success, our ability to move forward, our ability to pull the community together. We're doing that. I'm about to start having a get together with all the ward members and their council member once a quarter and have community discussions about where we are, what we need to do. We're going to have a breakfast with the chief once a month with various groups. This is the only way I know to bring the community together. And no one is exempt from the law. And everyone in town has heard that, so they know that we're on it, and we're here to take care of everyone equally. And so if you're a prominent person and you step out of line, you're going to be a prominent person behind bars. That's just all I know to say. Okay?
Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, that is Investigation Homicide. We have been with Brigadier General / Police Chief Robert Thomas of Crystal Springs.
So cool.
Small town folks, you might want to take a listen and go back and listen again. He's doing some things that are making a big difference. And we also were friends with the former police chief, Tony Hemphill, and we want to give him some credit too. This podcast is brought to you by Daniel Anderson and Audio Alchemy. If you have a podcast that you have been dreaming of and you hadn't known what to do for it, this is the guy. So give him a call. You can find him on Facebook and that kind of thing. And he has done all kinds of awesome stuff for us. We're very grateful to him. So that's your guy if you need a podcast. And thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Therese.
Thank you, General.
You're welcome.
Thank you
y'all
guys for
having me.
listening and watching. And we'll be back in 2 weeks.
In
We're
2
out
weeks,
next week.
We're going to have fun in Kentucky.
Yeah,
next
that's right.
week.
We'll send y'all pictures from Kentucky.
Yeah, we will.
What's happening in Kentucky?
We're going.
Oh!